with the Roar webinar series, and Jody Robie is our special guest of today. All week we've been talking about careers, talent acquisition, and really how we need to start preparing ourselves to get jobs. And so welcome, Jody.
Thank you. It was great to see you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us. So I'm going to just jump right to it. Let's talk about job seekers. Let's talk about the trends that you're seeing out there and anything you think that is relevant that we should be talking about. So let's start with job seekers.
Sure. So I think it's obviously a very difficult time for all aspects. The folks that are hiring can't hire. They can't hire because they don't know what to predict. They don't know even if the people were about to offer can come into the business and sustain, because no one knows when this is kind of ending. You know, the sales cycles are on hold. Even I was talking to a global recruiter yesterday, and they're trying to keep warm strategies with candidates, but they can't go through to the point of having all of the security checks because those vendors aren't working and open. So it's kind of a knock-on effect, almost like a supply chain.
So things are just kind of on pause.
They're on
things that are already in the flow.
They're on pause for some industries, and some are going, it really is dependent upon the industry. We work with organizations like Moderna, who everyone's heard of, and they're doing massive hiring. They have lots of people that they're trying to hire right now because of not only the COVID work, but they have several drugs going into commercial. And then, working with other organizations that really need help, for, frontline workers for all those industries, especially senior living facilities. That's where the opportunities are going to be. So I think from a talent standpoint, it's probably a time to look at your skills. And if you've had a career in hospitality, or you've worked in restaurants, or you might be in a different type of role, look at those industries that are actually going to need to have a new type of person with those skills.
Now, so let's walk through that. If I am in banking, I always say banking, I've never been in banking, but let's say if I were in banking and I want to go into healthcare, how can I present myself in the best way possible, even though I don't have the exact title that they're looking for?
I think it really comes down to being very situationally aware of what your skills are. So,
situationally aware, what does that mean?
Am I a good communicator? Am I good at spreadsheets? Am I comfortable working remotely? What are those things that you can prove? And then the hardest part is getting past the automation that's going to screen you out. So who do you know? Is there a way that you can make a connection and at least have an informational conversation and find out? My guess is there's going to be a lot of new roles. There might be safety roles for organizations that haven't existed. So you may have been in security at a bank, and now there's an opportunity to sort of take that to a different type of industry. It will be very interesting to see what happens. The roles are going to be different. The skills are going to be different. And folks who've never had to worry about safety, we're all going to have to worry about safety. So it's going to really influence and change how we do business and how we work together.
I imagine a lot of the companies are going to start adding compliance officers or compliance teams because there's going to be more regulations.
Yeah. I do. And I also think more on digital. The days of being able to make all your relationships, the worlds you and I, have lived in, going to events, hosting events, that's going to be very different. So if you have not worried about your career site or your landing page or having a social media strategy, this is a time where organizations are really looking to sanitize their brand. They're going to have to get their message out there, whether it's for the product side or the employer value side. You're going to have situations where you may have had to lay people off and you need to now hire people back. So what's your message going to be that's authentic and relevant, and how do you get it out to the right people before you're at the point where you're suddenly looking at needing to fill a lot of roles?
Now, intergenerational or generational workers,
Mm.
various generations working in the same industries or in the same companies. How do you see that happening with this new digital compliance that we're going to be tasked with?
I think it's going to need to have an independence of each individual worker, no matter what level they're at, to be able to communicate on Zoom and be able to figure out how to use SharePoint. I see reverse mentoring happening with some of the, the interns and the graduate students and the newer, younger folks to help out. It's been an interesting struggle for a lot of people. Working in global businesses for the last 8 years, I'm used to Skype and web meetings, but most people aren't, not all day and not all morning. And folks who have admins that usually do all this and they don't even know how to use their Outlook, they're going to struggle. And so it's a good time to upskill. There's lots of free trainings. There's lots of YouTube videos, how to watch it. So if you're in that category, put a little bit of time into your calendar to try to think about, let me learn how to do these things before I'm in an interview situation.
Now, I know that you work with a lot of companies and you're guiding them and giving them advice. Can you tell us some of the advice that you're giving them and
Sure.
what challenges they're having?
I think the big challenge right now is keeping warm and not just shutting off recruiting, even though you can't recruit. Because at some point, the switch is going to turn, and it's going to turn, and you may not have the TA and recruiting team that you had. Those recruiters may not be able to be hired back, or they may not want to come back. So what are you doing now to take advantage of the tools at your disposal? Take a little bit of time and look in your applicant tracking systems and see, are there people I should be reconnecting with, even informally? Look at those projects that you always put off to the side. So is it revising some messaging and core values? Is it doing something about formalizing a wellness initiative? Those types of things are going to need to be done, whether you are down 50% of your staff or you're going to grow 50%. And it's always the L&D and the training that gets sort of pushed aside when everyone's busy. So my advice is really have a clear picture of, is there anything we can do now with our staff? And then what are the things that are always aspirational that maybe we can start to do? Even employee referrals, start having conversations with good talent when you're ready. But really owning your brand and understanding the marketplace, looking at other competitors and seeing what's on their website and their Glassdoor ratings. It's the time that we normally don't have to think for a few minutes about the world around us and not just what's on our plate. And that's really the best advice I can give.
Now, Jody, I know, and I've spoken about this all week, there's some folks that are looking at their careers and they're thinking, you know what, I don't want to be an executive anymore. I don't want the responsibility. I enjoy being able to come home by 6 or 5, whatever that time is. And they want to go into a different type of role that is maybe not as high as that particular one that they're in. What are your recommendations to those people?
I just had that exact conversation with someone yesterday. I think there are a lot of folks that are, been working 25, 30 years and sort of said, and yeah, enough is enough. This has kind of given us some time to reflect and being home, having dinner every night with your kids and not traveling. So I think you need to really come to terms with what's going to go away if you make those shifts. So how hung up are you going to be on your title? Does the title matter? Is it the work that you want to do? Those are the things that really, those are the things that are really important. If I just love to be startup businesses, I'm not going to have a CHRO title and salary, but I might be doing something I love. So I think it's sort of really making a list of what can I afford to do and change? How much do I care about title? What are the skills that I want to do? And what's the stuff I don't? I was talking to someone the other day who she's in transition and she does a lot of really formal events and, had been a management consultant before her kids. And a lot of the jobs that she sees adds, being in charge of the CEO's calendar. And she's like, I'm not willing to do that. Like, so you have to learn and decide, where do you draw the line on stepping down? And then once you do that, there's going to be a lot of opportunity for consultants, and now it's easier to survive without corporate benefits. You can, do the mass plan. So I think that's changed a lot too.
So as a job seeker, it's an emotional piece. You have to be willing to let go of the title, whatever that title is, in order for you to jump into something different. But how about from the employer side, when they're looking at somebody that maybe was an SVP and now is looking at a manager role? How are they looking at folks like that?
It's tough, because I think there's a huge distrust that someone's just trying to escape something, or they're going to quit. No matter how many times qualified candidates say, I understand I'm overqualified, recruiters and hiring managers have all been burned by that. So I think it's a hard one to overcome. I think the only way to do it is to really be able to show and explain and map out why you want to make the change, and have references to support that. But that's
Do
the
you
challenge.
think, while we're finishing talking, I'm just going to launch the poll just to get a sense on what folks want us to talk about. So I'll do that really quickly. But how can you address that in a cover letter?
So here's the sad truth. The art of cover letters are going away.
Which is great. I hate cover letters.
Everyone hates doing cover letters. People don't like reading cover letters. I like reading cover letters because it tells me someone is taking a little bit of effort and has put thought into why I should consider. So I do think the problem with the technology is you can spend 15 minutes brushing your teeth and apply to 10 jobs. Hit a button on Glassdoor, LinkedIn, use an app, use your Siri to do it. Yes. So I think it is just being very clear and saying, I know you may think I'm overqualified. Like, be honest and just throw it out there and try to say, I know my experience has been X, Y, Z, but through my volunteering or through this, I think this would be why I'd like to do it. I understand I'm a non-traditional candidate, but I would value 15-minute conversation.
The other thing, so we just got the poll results back. What folks want to hear a little bit more about is the career landscape, followed by the job trends that we spoke briefly about. And then we've got actually interview tips are a little higher. So let's talk about a career landscape, followed by interview tips. And I think the resume, the all-consuming resume, we do have to talk about that a little bit. So let's go back to career landscape. You do work with a lot of employers, so you have a better sense than most people what they're looking for. One of the things that you said that you've already talked about is the fact that they're on hold. They're putting everything in place. So once they're ready, you need to be ready as well.
And you want to be ready first. So I think now is a great time to try to connect. When it's just reaching back out to the folks that are in your network. How are you doing? Hey, I see you're at such and such a place. How is it there? Like, it's the time to start to get a little bit of the backstory. And I don't mean just legitimately going to like a recruiter. If you know someone in an organization that you have on your map of a place you think you might want to work, see who you know there, or put it on, I live in Natick. There's like mothers groups. There's all these groups on Facebook. If you want anything done, you post it, and 30 seconds later, there's a resource. Somebody works there, somebody knows someone's cousin. How do you get a personal connection so you can start to understand a little bit more and really put together a target? Like, try to think of, these are 5 or 10 companies that I'm interested in because of geography, because I know someone that works there, because of the types of roles or the types of work. And then just try to give yourself a project plan to start to make some connections on the candidate side, and on the recruiter side, it's doing the same thing. What does my talent forecast look like? Where am I with performances with the existing folks I have? Who's going to stick around and who might retire or decide that this has been too stressful? The people who are still working, in some cases, are having so much pressure versus the folks that have been furloughed or laid off, because they're doing the work of 2 or 3 people, sometimes at a half a salary, and they may not be sticking around after this, even though you're trying to engage them and thank them. So I think as a business leader and as a talent acquisition specialist, you need to have a plan A, B, C, and D. And part of that is figuring out and evaluating the talent that you have and the talent that you might want to start to connect with. So this is a great time to really, and I try to do that myself. Like, that's what I've just, it's been a challenging couple of weeks and months, and you could just stare at the computer and be sitting here and saying, oh my gosh, what's happening? But what's given me comfort is reaching out and reconnecting with people in my network that I usually don't have the time to, because I'm on a plane or I'm at a meeting, and that's been a gift during this period of time. Some of it may turn into business, but those are the things that you want to try to own yourself.
One of the other things that I've been noticing, and then I think let's jump a little bit onto interview tips and
Sure.
so on. But one of the things I've been noticing is that people are more reachable on LinkedIn than ever before. Sometimes I'm having conversations with folks. As a matter of fact, most of the people that I've engaged for the ROAR webinar are people that I have connected through LinkedIn and said, hey, are you free? And it seems easier than me emailing them or me calling them.
Agreed.
A lot easier.
I think because of what we just talked about. I think because people are spending a lot of time on LinkedIn, either looking at who's looking at me, what companies are out there hiring, or what news and trends can I follow. And it does seem like I'm finding that too. Even people I'm connected with, sometimes we're going back and forth on LinkedIn. Sometimes it's text and sometimes it's email, even clients sometimes, So I do think LinkedIn is becoming a really useful messenger tool. I do think it is getting overwhelming for some people. So I try to give the option. And I'm finding phone calls is something people are really excited to have, because we don't always want to brush our hair before we talk to everybody. We never before.
That's right.
So when I'm re-engaging with someone, I'll throw it out there and say, happy to just give you a buzz, or we can set up a web call and sort of let them drive that. And that would be my recommendation as you connect is, hey, what's the best way to connect? And people want to connect right now. I think that's part of it, Fina.
And I think also people are interested in providing guidance. So I know I've reached out to several people and I've said, I need a little guidance for X, Y, Z. And they've been very approachable. Normally it takes them a little bit longer to answer, but lately it's been quick, if not immediate. Through LinkedIn, for me, it has been LinkedIn.
Yeah, I agree. I think, I also think we have more time to read. So that's the other thing, we're not commuting, we're not traveling. Unfortunately, a lot of us are working longer days because your office is in your bedroom or wherever you are, but it does give you do need those mental breaks. And so LinkedIn is a great professional place. If you, I know I've been blogging more than I normally have time to do. And it's been nice to hear back from people saying, oh, thanks for those tips. So it's a great way. It's a free resource for you to really start to pay attention on where you want to be as a candidate, or what types of people you want to start to follow or groups to join. So
be part of. Yes.
I agree.
Now, let's talk interview tips. Let's talk about Zoom interviews or go-to meetings, whatever you're using. Let's talk about some of the tips. Now, there's a question that we have, and they wanted to know about lighting during interviews.
About
lighting.
Well, you want them to be able to see you, but I think the video interviewing craze had started prior to this, just from a cost saving standpoint. There were early adopters, and now obviously it's a necessity. So back to that earlier point of just, you want to know how to start Zoom meetings. You want to do a practice run. You want to not waste 5 minutes of recruiters' time because you can't figure out how to get the audio on. So do some practicing. Once you're in the interview, I think it's an intimate setting that we're not used to in a first engagement. And so they're seeing you in your environment. Often you might see them or a kid or a cat or so, so you're getting into a comfortable situation that's usually not so comfortable. So I think it is
interesting. I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah.
Intimacy that's created. You're right.
It's interesting. So it can go one of two ways. It can sort of make things a little bit more informal, which could be great if you're someone who likes that, because all of a sudden I just saw your son in the background and I'm, but then there's certain people that don't want that informality.
Exactly.
So you're going to have to read the situation. And as far as lighting goes, I think everyone understands, I had a meeting with a CHRO who was literally in her pantry the other day, hiding from her family. So people are just doing what they need to do to be able to get through.
But I think there are things that you can do to better prepare your space for interviews, especially if you're going to have a number of them. So my recommendation, since I do Zooms all the time, is look at my background. So I'm aware of what's in the background, but in terms of lighting, you want to place the lighting in front of you versus behind you. And currently my house is very, very well lit, so I am in front of my window. You should try not to be behind your window,
right?
If that makes sense.
That's a good one. So you want people, the other challenge is certain organizations are still doing the interviews where you're recording your answers, and just be prepared if that situation happens. You often can't start over. So you have to just be prepared to be uninterrupted and go through your cycle.
So should you practice beforehand?
You won't know the questions. So,
but there must be, there always tends to be a certain rhythm to the type of questions that are asked.
You put your notes, have some cliff notes that you can sort of say, I want to make sure these are the things why I'm interested in the job. If always do your research about the company. So before you have any meeting with anyone, look at the website, look at the press update pages to see if they've had any announcements, because that's going to be what they assume you have done that research. And that would be my best tip. Yeah.
Plus, I think if you have an idea of what the questions are based on what you've been interviewed for in the past, what do you hope to accomplish with the job? Whatever those 5 key questions that people ask you, practice those beforehand. And that way, when you're in front of the camera or you're in front of the interview, that recording, you can do it in a great way.
I think just as far as the interview tips, and I think it kind of dovetails in with the career landscape, you want to make yourself relevant for that conversation. So if you are in that situation where you're trying to transition into a different field, why would that make sense for a company? I think it is going to make sense if I've worked in a hotel as concierge that I could do concierge at a nursing home. And here's why. And maybe take a look back on your LinkedIn to see, let me look at the people who are there and have any of them come from different industries and different types of businesses, so that that you wouldn't be the first. So you can take the time to do the research, and it's going to come down to, do you have the skills, but are you the right culture fit? And so that EVP, that employer value proposition, is going to be more critically important now than ever before. Because
Jody, too, forgive me. The other thing that's also important is the verbiage. Know the verbiage of the job that you're doing or you're applying for.
Yep, the vernacular is really important. If they talk about employees as community or as partners or as patients or as, those little words will turn someone on or off if you're off base. And just again, just do the research and try to really have a clear vision of how you would see yourself being a support there and being able to join. And I think, if you get a sense of the culture, if it's entrepreneurial culture, talk about those entrepreneurial jobs that you've had. And that will help people realize that you understand that you're not going to have layers of admins and you're going to have to do this yourself, even if it's from a different industry. I think that's what people want to know is, are you going to be able to fit into how we do things?
Last question. We only have a few minutes. Well, maybe it won't be the last question, but it is a question. If you're an entrepreneur and you're hoping to go back inside into the corporate world, there's a lot of folks that have become consultants. They're entrepreneurs. They work for themselves. Now they want to go back to a company. Any recommendations?
Yeah, I think it is being very, very clear of why you want to make the change. It's not just I'm running from the fact that I couldn't be successful on my own. I still want to be on my own, but I can't afford to be on my own. So that's why I'm applying. It's not going to work. But
you can't say that, even if that's the reality.
Yeah. I mean, I think you need to say, I loved this, but I miss being with a team. I miss people, this year I became a shareholder for TalentWorks, and I joined into the business. And I just didn't have that pure entrepreneurial spirit myself to do my own company. And I wanted to do it with the vision of my CEO, because I know that I am most successful when I have other people that are really good at other things. Mm-hmm. I don't want to be doing invoices. I don't want to be doing these things. I want to be able to be doing things like this. And so you have to be able to explain why you want to come into a larger environment where you can't make every decision alone, but you have that collaboration and those skill sets that are going to enhance your experience. And that's, I think, what you need to be able to communicate, and maybe do a trial run. A lot of success stories I see is people do a contract. They do like a 3-month, let's try it out. And then it can turn into a permanent role if everyone feels like it's a good fit.
That's a great idea, the contract situation, because then you can decide whether or not it's a good fit for you and for them. And
you'll be able to say, I've survived as an independent before. And I think that's the gun shy. That's especially now, I think, from a trend. Talent acquisition and companies are not going to necessarily bring back all the roles that they've had, and they're going to want to have more flexible options. So it could be a really good time to offer that flexibility and say, I do want this at this point, but I'm willing to let us all try it out to see how it goes.
Do you think that's also going to be a trend in terms of companies not bringing back roles, yet having more consultants?
I see it I definitely see it on our side with the outsourcing. We are a recruitment process outsourcer, and I am getting more and more phone calls about, can we just have your team do this for 3 months, 6 months, until we see what the volumes are and decide how much headcount, benefits, and full-time employees we want to bring back in. So I do think outsourcing is going to be even more relevant for roles that normally you might have 3 or 4 people. You can do something in 6 or 8 weeks or 3 months. So I do think that consultants and outsourcing, if they're priced right and it could be more efficient with their expertise, is going to be what organizations are going to lean on, at least for the rest of this year.
That would be interesting. I wonder what type of outreach they're going to do in order to get those consultants, because obviously they're going to have to look at some other way of doing that than what has been used in the past.
Yeah, well, sorry, Tina, that's back to the digital footprint. Put yourself out there, put your company out there. I got a call yesterday from someone who found me on Google and had a similar conversation. So I think it's important to make sure you're saying what you want to say out there, because you don't know who's going to need it.
Right, right. Get out there as much as possible. Well, Jody, it was a pleasure having you on the Roar webinar series. And if anyone has questions, the best way to reach you is through LinkedIn.
Yes, that would be great. And happy to continue the conversation. But thank you so much. It was great to see you. And I think this is great what you're doing. So good luck, everyone.
Thank you. Thank
All
you,
right.
everyone.
Take care.